I don't want to talk to you. You're silly. You're not even that scary. You do sod all in the episode. That's Nick's opinion on the monster. And mine, as a matter of fact. Who wants to see a story about snowmen? Right. I'm just going to imagine you melting. We're walking in the air. Varoom, 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 Ollie. Oh, it stopped. Whoops. That was pointless and uneventful.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who, the 2012 Christmas special, The Snowmen. Okay, where do we start? Okay, let's start where the episode starts. So, the episode starts at Christmas 1842, I believe, where this boy called Walter Simeon does not want to play with any fellow kids at what appears to either be a children's home or a school. And somehow because the snow is a parasite, this particular snow is a parasite that can mirror emotions and mirror thoughts. It mirrors the dark thoughts of Simeon onto a snowman he is building, and the snowman then convinces Simeon throughout the next 50 years to somehow prepare for a new breed of snow so that they can take over and take over the world or something and create more snow people or something. We then cut to 50 years later, 1892, where Simeon has perfected all of this, and they are waiting on the body of a frozen governess who died in a pond, which then froze over. They're waiting for a new ice governess to be formed. They've been waiting a year for it, and they're waiting for her to be formed so that they can then take over and give this intelligence that Simeon has created through the mirroring a physical body. Okay, so the plan is a bit complicated. Okay, so Simeon's plan, that's basically the plan. And the motivation behind all of this is Simeon didn't want to play with the other children for reasons we don't actually know. We don't actually know why Simeon doesn't want to play with the children. Maybe he likes to be alone, but he doesn't say that. He says that the other children are silly. So we don't know why he doesn't want to play with the other children, and because of that, he reflects his dark thoughts onto the snowmen, which ergo, with the mirroring, creates the Great Intelligence. Oh yeah, the Great Intelligence from the Patrick Troughton era is back. And funny enough, I didn't actually notice GI. Didn't even notice it stood for Great Intelligence until the end of the episode. So the episode fooled me, and I would have gotten that reference in a heartbeat if I'd noticed it sooner. When the episode was first broadcast, that is. Mind you, the Doctor seemingly knows about the Great Intelligence when he has this London Underground map from 1967 tin that he shows off. And then later on, he looks at the card and he says, Great Intelligence. Rings a bell. Well, you were just referencing Web of Fear just a couple of minutes ago. Even Vastra brings it back up again. But more on that later. More on the inconsistencies later. Now it's 1892, and Simeon's plan is almost come to fruition. However, a barmaid named Clara, played by Jenna Louise Coleman, is noticing these strange happenings, and she tries to get the attention of the Doctor, who is now in a Scrooge-like state following the departure of, I should say, the um, forced exit of Amy and Rory in the previous episode. Although he kind of is, he doesn't really want to be traveling with anyone. He doesn't really want another companion with him, which kind of goes against Amy and River's request from that previous episode that they don't want him to travel alone. But now he's all moping around and being Scrooge-like. It could have been an interesting direction, but he doesn't stay like this for too long. It's about 26 minutes where he starts to warm up again. And then he's more or less willing to take Clara with him later on. Maybe they should just not have bothered with the Scrooge angle and just be them in the morning, in mornings a bit. Anyway, so Clara and Doctor have a bit of an interaction, and they have some, I say, fun with the snowmen. Not actual fun, but you know what I mean. Have some interaction with the snowmen. There's a very forced bit where Clara actually asks the question Doctor Who when she pops into the cab, and she chases down the cab and Clyde's on board and comes down from the roof. It's a bit strange how that happens. Oh yeah, the characters just would like to say the words Doctor Who so much in this episode. They just can't stop themselves. I mean, fair enough in the Sign of the Daleks when the Daleks did it because they forgot the Doctor, but now it's just a bit strange. I mean, Clara asking Doctor Who once is fine. That makes sense. Even though it shouldn't be the first words that starts off a relationship, it doesn't really that's not really how it starts relations between the Doctor and companion start. They usually happen. The question usually comes a little bit later, and then every other time it just feels a bit forced. The first time it kind of makes sense, but afterwards it kind of gets a bit tedious, as does the Doctor telling everyone to shut up a lot in this episode. I can understand the Doctor having to tell people to shut up once or twice, but 5 times I believe in this episode, that's a bit excessive even for this Doctor. That being said, Matt Smith continues to be fan-bloody-tastic as per usual. Not a note wrong. He's perfect in the Scrooge role earlier on, and then he gets back to more how he usually is like later on. Not to mention, this episode perfectly demonstrates Matt Smith's 11th Doctor going from one emotion to another within a second. Like, with a snap of the fingers, you can go from happy to really cross within like that. Brilliant stuff from Matt Smith. Jenna Louise Coleman, or Jenna Coleman as she became known after from August 2013, is also making fantastic first impressions as Clara Oswin Oswald. And Clara Oswin Oswald is a great character. This is Victorian Clara, not the one, not Clara Oswald, as we'll get to know her later on. But Victorian Clara, she's a really great character, and it would have been great if she had been the companion from this point onwards instead of the real Clara. But more on that in future reviews. But Jenna Louise Coleman off to a fantastic start as Clara, and Victorian Clara is a brilliant character. It's also nice to see the Doctor's friends from A Good Man Goes to War return. Whilst they might get a slight overuse, I say a slight, there's only 4 episodes with them. This one, 2 more in this series, and then the first episode of Series 8 plus A Good Man Goes to War. But I say a slight overuse because they didn't really get overused beyond the Deep Breath. Not really. The closest you'd probably get would then be their audio spin-off series and their one Doctor Who magazine comic strip. But even then, those stories are focused on those characters. So I don't think they get overused, but they do have a slight overusage, perhaps, because their stories are very close to each other, from here to Deep Breath. That being said, they don't appear after Deep Breath, so But Madame Vastra, great character with Neil McIntosh, brilliant performance. This is the story where they are definitive. She and Jenny Flint, played by Caitlin Stewart, are confirmed to be a married couple. In the previous episode, it was just hinted at that they were in a relationship, or very close. Here, they are outright confirmed to be a couple. Well, technically in the Vastra Investigates prequel minisode, or prologue, technically, that they are confirmed to. Vastra is confirmed to be in love with in love with Jenny, and this episode confirms they are married. They also have Strax as their butler. Now, Strax supposedly died in a Good Man Goes to War. However, apparently a good friend of the Doctor's brought him back. So, are we supposed to assume that was River Song? Or Vastra or Jenny? No, I don't understand how that works. We were confused for a long time when it was announced Strax would be in this episode. We were confused how Strax was going to be in this episode, and then they told us he was just brought back to life by another friend. But Strax's brain didn't quite make the return journey. He's a little bit muddled and confused, a bit like when the Doctor is when he's regenerated. Except he either stays this way or he gets worse as he goes along. Strax is definitely more comedic, and it was a setup that he's not a normal Sontaran in The Good Man Goes to War. However, he's definitely more comedic here than he was in that story. However, the best jokes, in not just from Strax but other stories, are when he plays it completely straight, like when he's asking Clara if he can take her coat after threatening to obliterate her if she tries to escape. And then later on, when Alice, the servant of Captain Latimer's house, we'll get onto him in a bit, and when she answers the door and Vastra and Jenny are there, and Vastra basically explains that she's Elizabeth woman from the dawn of time and Jenny is her wife, and then Alice screams, and then Strax comes in the back and Alice screams, even though he said, please keep calm. That bit was pretty funny because the Paternoster gang were keeping it very straight. So the best comedic moments in the story are when the characters are straight. However, some do feel forced, like Drax's grenade line when the Doctor asks him, if you find something new in the world, something you've never seen before, what then do you do with it? That was actually funny in the trailers, though. It was funny in the trailers, but in the episode it wasn't funny. It was a bit forced. But Strax, I think, is good here. I think he gets more silly later on down the line, but he's okay here. He's not as good as A Good Man Goes to War, but I think he's still good here. Dan Starkey definitely continues to be great in the role. Dr. Simeon, played by Richard E. Grant. Richard E. Grant definitely is really, really great at providing a very sour face for the character for the majority of the episode. And whilst I love Richard E. Grant and other things, including Doctor Who, The Curse of the Fatal Death, and Scream of the Shalka, where he played two different Doctors in each of those stories, an alternative 10th Doctor in Fatal Death and an alternative 9th Doctor in Scream of the Shalka. Here is Dr. Simeon. He's not that great. He's all right. He's not that great until the end, anyway. He's all right. He's pretty good at the end, but he's not that great for the most part. He's all right. He's serviceable, but not that amazing. He does all right, I suppose. Ian McKellen, on the other hand, is really great as the voice of the Great Intelligence. Ooh, he does a really great voice and a pretty chilling villainous voice. It's just a shame the Great Intelligence doesn't really do that much. Simeon's technically the main villain, but the Intelligence doesn't really do an awful lot. And it's again with the whole thing with the London Underground map. The Doctor has the tin from the 1967 map, and Web of Fear was released in 1968. Although there are arguments to say it was set in 1970. But point is that it's a map of the underground before the events of the Web of Fear. But whilst the Doctor's holding up the tin and showing it off to the Great Intelligence, and then the Intelligence itself forms itself without having to need a body, and then Vastra mentions this up, and then the Doctor looks at the card and then is like, Great Intelligence, rings a bell. But you were looking like you knew who it was when you showed him the tin, or is that just a coincidence? He doesn't even, and if the ending is anything to go by, he doesn't even make the connection. The audience is supposed has to do that. Heck, I made that connection at the end, and I should have gotten it sooner. But heck, because I'm a fan. I make those connections. Like I hear something, I immediately make a connection, or like, I wonder if that's connected to. I think, in fact, the last special, Androzani Minor, I think I even knew that was the planet. That Androzani was the planet from Caves of Androzani. It was a reference to that story, although they came from Major, not Minor, which actually appears in that story. But should have gotten that reference. Great Intelligence. However, it does seem like the Doctor is having a harder time getting it than the audience does. So, yeah. As for the other supporting characters, Captain Latimer is alright. I think played by Tom Ward, although he's not that great. Same for Alice, played by Liz White, although she does have some funny moments, as I mentioned earlier. And the kids, Francesca and Digby, actually they're pretty decent support kid characters. They don't do an awful lot, so they're not that annoying. They're actually pretty decent. In their the actors in their roles, I think they're actually brother and sister anyway in real life. So that's pretty good that they got an actual brother and sister to play brother and sister characters. That was interesting, and I think they do pretty well. I think, are they the best kid actors of Series 7 so far? Yes, if we're including Doctor Wizard and the Wardrobe, they're definitely better than Cyril. Both characters and the actors, they're better than Cyril, but not quite as good as Lily. And there wasn't really many other kid characters in Series 7, so there's that one girl from Town Called Mercy, but she hardly did anything, and then the whole episode apparently was being told by her great-granddaughter. You do the maths. Right, for the rest of the story, there's a little bit of inconsistencies within the stories, like when the kids and Clara run past the Ice Lady, and it just appears like they've had to run past the Ice Lady because from the looks of it, the door is on the other side of the room to where they were, so how did they get out? They must have gone past the Ice Lady, and we don't really see it. There's also a bit where Clara has to get out of the cab to follow the Doctor, and it just happens, basically. In fact, there's a lot of just because. Clara, when the Doctor does take Clara on as a companion, she's given the TARDIS key pretty much straight away, which is more than could be said for most of the other companions. Rose got it in her fourth episode, Martha in her seventh, Donna in her fifth, and none of the other companions ever got it, apart from possibly Sarah Jane Smith in the Android Invasion. And whether that's the one whether she kept that key, and that's the one that appears in the Sarah Jane Adventures, or she had to give it back to the Doctor, and then she got another key to keep later on, is up for the debate. I can't quite remember whether she returned the key at the end of Android Invasion, or she kept it, and that's the one that appears in the Sarah Jane Adventures. It's in the attic. It's a small detail. So, yeah. So Sarah Jane, presumably, Rose, Martha, and Donna are the only four companions previously to get a key, and yet they didn't get this in their very first appearance. Like I said, Rose got it in her fourth episode, Donna got it in her fifth, Martha got it in her seventh, and Sarah Jane got it in pretty much halfway through her third season. So, yeah, basically a year before she left. And she was there for about 3 1/3 seasons. So, yeah, and yet Clara just gets the key like that. The Doctor's like, I never know why, I just know who. Well, I guess that applies to characters like Turlo and Adam, I guess, Doctor. You're like, this Turlo guy, I think someone's trying to make him kill me. I'm going to let him travel with me so that he can learn not to kill me, and we can defeat this villain together. And with Adam, he's like, this kid's got potential. He's smart. Maybe, so long as he doesn't screw up, he should be okay. Yeah, so sometimes the Doctor doesn't always make the right choices, and not just in the TV series. In fact, it's probably worse in expanded media, unless he/she thinks they can change that person, and most of the time they can. But the only reason technically the Doctor gave Clara the key and said, I never know why, I only know who, is so that then Victorian Clara can then die. So, yeah, we were building up this whole emotional bit just so that we could feel even more emotional for when Victorian Clara is taken by the Ice Lady and they fall off the cloud together, and basically she dies at the end of the episode. To be honest, I didn't feel emotional in that bit. After all of that, I knew that was coming up as well. I didn't actually feel emotional when rewatching that. I felt emotional many other times featuring other characters, especially in the new series. But this time round, I did not feel emotion. And the scene itself, building up to it, it feels just, it's carbon made. It's cardboard. Instead of actual genuine emotions like we've done before. And Stephen Moffat, I know you can do genuine emotions. I've seen you do it lots of times before and after. So, yeah, but the only reason the Doctor kind of says, Clara, come on board the TARDIS with me, here's a key, is so that we can see her die. And I don't even think the real Clara, when we get to meet her, ever got the TARDIS key. Not permanently anyway, not got her own one like Rose, Donna, Martha, and arguably Sarah Jane. And I don't think any companion since has gotten a TARDIS key yet. So, yeah, this moment was pretty forced. This was a pretty forced moment. And the ending itself, when Clara's crying, was the whole of the snow mirroring everything, and when the Doctor has told her earlier to think about the snow melting, um, earlier on in the episode, at the end, when she and her family are crying, because she's the governess of the family I was talking about earlier, when they're crying, and the whole family crying on Christmas Eve, as the Doctor explains, is what stops the snow in the end. And, the great intelligence that Simeon has been bitten by the memory worm, which is introduced in this story. That was a funny scene earlier on with Dr. Strax, Clara, and the memory worm. But the memory worm, which basically erases an hour of memory if you touch it, and you might lose half your life if you bite it, and Simeon loses his adult life, and the intelligence tries to take his body. And then once he's building up the power, you then get the really rushed and really stupid explanation of Clara and her whole family crying on Christmas Eve, which ultimately stops the villain, and the intelligence only escapes in intelligent form but doesn't have a physical body, and Simeon dies. But yeah, her whole family cries on Christmas Eve, and that's causes it to rain, which causes the snow to melt, which causes the plan to be stopped. How many times I'm going to clap sarcastically or whatever the emotion is? I mean, that's happy and genuine. This is unimpressed and sarcastic. Yeah, what a terrible ending. Okay, let's wrap this up. Production-wise, there's some really good bits. Great directing, great cinematography, great set design, but editing in some places is a little bit hokey. That's sometimes helps with the inconsistencies, like how Clara got out of the cab, how she and the kids ran past the glass lady. There's a few editing knockabouts that don't quite fit. Maybe it was due for timing or something. I'm not quite sure. But most of the editing is good, but there is a few plot inconsistencies that are kind of made a bit worse by the editing. In fact, maybe even created by the editing in the first place. Music by Murray Gold continues to be brilliant, and that's really about it. Oh, the Ice Lady. I forgot to talk about her. So the girl, Francesca, is dreaming about her Ice Lady, about her old governess who got frozen in the pond. This is what the Great Intentions wants. They want her to dream about her so that she gets formed in the ice in time for Christmas Day. And then when she gets out of the ice, she then somehow beats the Doctor up the stairs to Clara and Digby and Francesca, and then starts going a bit, saying that the children are very naughty. And that's basically her motivation, and that's all she does. We don't even know why the old governess was so angry with the children all the time. She was cross all the time, and she says that they've been very naughty and stuff, but we don't really know why she was cross. Did she think the children were naughty all the time? Because these children certainly seem well behaved and pretty likable kids. So I don't know, unless they have some sort of change after the previous governess died or something. But yeah, the Ice Governess, she has no motivation. She says the kids are naughty, but that's all we get. Naughty, naughty children, and that's it. And no motivation. It's like they copied, the Ice mirrored some of her personality, as well as what was in Francesca's dream. But yeah, it just comes across more annoying than anything. So overall, The Snowmen, this isn't a great story. This is a kind of a weak story. Most of the good stuff comes with the Doctor and Clara interactions. But the plot itself, with the Snowmen and Simeon and the GI, the Great Intelligence, is really, really, really weak. Oh, and I also forgot another scene. The one-word test. Okay, so in this one scene, Vastra is trying to get Clara to answer her questions with only one word, due to the fact that multiple words can lead to lies and falsehoods, whilst one word remains truthful. And whilst Clara sticks to this rule, and this is actually a pretty decent idea, when Vastra starts talking a lot about the Doctor not helping, and Clara catches her out for lying, then but then Vastra then goes on another tangent about how the Doctor used to be a hero in the day. Basically doing the opposite of what she wanted Clara to do. She's basically doing what she said would happen with multiple words. And then on top of that, she gives Clara an impossible task of trying to come up with a word that will make the Doctor listen to her, that explains everything. So basically, one word to describe what's been going on, what's happening, and why the Doctor should help and care, but just the one word. And she chooses pond, which, of course, with the Doctor, only gets back into action because it relates to Amy and Rory. You know, this episode has quite a lot of enjoyable moments. It's got some really good stuff. It's really greatly put together, but the story kind of sucks a little bit, besides the Doctor-Clara interactions and stuff with the Paternoster gang. It's kind of a mess. It's a mess of us. It's not messy executed like the Timeless Children. It's not as messy on a script-wise as like the Twin Dilemma, but it's still kind of a bit of a mess. It's got some really great stuff, but it's also got some stuff that really needed to work a little bit better, or needed a bit more expansion, or just shouldn't even be there in the first place. It's just all over the place a little bit, which is a shame because it was still quite enjoyable. Although, mind you, I did get depressed on the first viewing back in 2012 when Clara died. It's like, and I kind of felt depressed about that whole thing. That was on my first viewing back in 2012. I was 13 when I saw that, and that was the first and currently only time I've ever been depressed by a Doctor Who episode. That ending. Yeah, I've been cross, I've been upset, I've been sad, I've been angry, I've been scared by Doctor Who episodes, but never depressed, except the first time I watched this ending. So I will be giving The Snowmen a more than it probably deserves 5 out of 10. Character interactions are great. There's some good comedy moments. There's a couple of good scripty stuff, and it looks really great. However, it really needed another rewrite. It definitely felt like there was a lot of contrivances. There was a lot of problems. The editing could have been better in places to help withdraw some plot holes, and it could have been less of a mess on a script-wise. I can see what this story is trying to do. It's trying to introduce the Doctor's character, Doctor-companion dynamic, but then it's revealed that this character dies, and then the Doctor realizes it's the same girl as from Asylum of the Daleks. There's a real Clara out there. I've got to go and find her, and then try and work out how she can be in two places at once and die both times, and see what goes on. And that basically sets up the next half of the series' story arc, as well as also setting up the main villain for later on in Series 7 Part 2, the Great Intelligence, returning for the first time since 1968 to Web of Fear. Whether or not the events of Series 7 Part 2 follow up from the events of those two stories, as this story presumably takes place before those two stories, but I think Series 7 Part 2's two appearances of the Great Intelligence come after the Patrick Troughton stories. Possibly. I'm not quite sure. They don't really tie in with the Patrick Troughton duology, Great Intelligence stories that well, to be honest. Which is a shame, because it's a returning villain from that era. No Yetis in sight anytime soon, though, guys. Don't. Sorry about that. Although they did appear in the Five Doctors, so there's always that. But yeah, The Snowmen, it's a bit of a mess. There's some great stuff on one side, but on the other side, there's a lot of weaker stuff. Bit of a disappointment, really. Anyway, so that's it from me. Thank you for watching this review. Tune in next time, where we will start Part 2 of Doctor Who Series 7, which will be the 6th episode of the series, The Bells of St. John. And whilst The Snowmen was a bit of a disappointment and a bit of a weak start to Series 7 Part 2, what is the rest of Series 7 Part 2 like? Stay tuned to find out. I'll see you guys next time for The Bells of St. John. Goodbye. forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel.